Halt podcast. Let's go.
You're dealing with an expert in guerrilla warfare. With a man who's the best. With guns, with knives, with his bare hands. A man who's been trained to ignore pain, ignore weather, to live off the land. His job was to dispose of enemy personnel. To kill. Period. Win by attrition.
Michael Parker, welcome. Thank you for being here today. For those of you that know the show, we know that sometimes we like to have crazy fun episodes and sometimes like to have some serious episodes and bring on people that have great programs, great companies, great organizations that are a benefit to the veteran and our first responders. Today with me is Michael Parker, the creator, founder, the man behind the mission of Second Chance Rehabilitation Ranch. Michael, thank you for being here today, brother. How you doing?
Good, man. Appreciate you having me.
Absolutely, man. I always peruse social media, LinkedIn, looking for any organization that has the ability to take veterans or first responders and get them in the outside world. There's something important about getting back into nature. Right? I know it. I've seen it work great for some of my friends, the most resistant guys that did not want to do therapy, that didn't want to talk to somebody, that people that are like, I'm never going to talk to anybody. Then to go do, equine therapy. They get out there, and some of them have been fortunate enough to go work in ranches after they've separated from the military. And it's like seeing somebody just completely do a shift, just complete change. And that's why I believe it's so important. And that's why I want to talk to you today. So tell us how you found yourself in this space.
Yeah. So I guess growing up, like I always wanted to be a Marine since I was really little. Like that was number one. But there was also a part of me that loved watching the old Westerns, loved the cowboy thing. So there's a part of me that wanted to be a cowboy as well. So after I got out of the Marines, it was like, well, what do I do next? I was like, well, we've already done one thing we wanted to do since we were a kid. Why not try to do the other one? Went through a rough patch. It was definitely a journey. Went through a rough patch in late 2015, most of 2016 actually, and had a good friend that was stationed in Hawaii. Was like, hey, you need to get your shit together. And so I ended up moving out there, staying with her, started working on a ranch, not doing anything with horses or cattle or anything. I was actually a zipline tour guide and got the chance to transfer over and work with the horses. And, it was being out in nature. At that time I started getting out in nature and hiking a lot because there's a lot of beautiful mountains and places to see in Hawaii. And I noticed, I quit taking medication at that point. Let's back up to that. Like, I didn't like the way it felt. I felt like I was like playing a third person shooter. Like I was not actually in control of my life, and so I quit taking the medication when I went out there. And when I started hiking and kayaking and stuff, I noticed that I started to feel a lot better. Yeah. And I noticed the more I did it, the more it carried over into outside life. And then I started working with the horses and, again, just more healing. I was a very quick fuse, and you can't be like that with horses. If you escalate, they escalate. And so the only way to get them to calm down is to calm yourself down. And, I gained a lot of emotional management and regulation in that time. And that's where the journey started. That was probably late 2017. And I was actually in the middle of a horseback ride, in the middle of the trail. I call it that light bulb moment, like that light above my head. It just went off. And I was like, hey, like if this stuff works for me, how many other people would benefit from this? And that's when I planted that seed. And I'm a huge believer that you speak things into existence, because from that point on, for the next 2 years, I told everybody when they had asked me what my plans for the future were, I would say, well, my 5-year plan is, start this ranch to help veterans. Yeah. At that point, I hadn't done my homework on what was going on in the first responder world. So at that point, it was just veterans. Then 2019, I was working at a different ranch. I'd shifted over there. They let me work with cattle, and I started learning the ranch hand stuff. And they downsized, let me go, and I was also living on the ranch. So when they let me go, I found myself just like that, homeless and unemployed.
That's a real
And
cowboy. That's a real cowboy situation.
yeah, for real. And I was like, well, what do I do now? And I was kind of still like at that point, like kind of drifting back into a bad space, or actually coming up out of it. But we know, like, when you're coming up out of it, there's still that period where you're going up, but it's still bad. And that's kind of where I was at when that all happened. And it was the life coach, man, that got me to where I am now. I was applying for job after job after job, and wasn't even getting. I'm like, dude, I'm overqualified for all of these jobs. And I think that was the problem, is that, like, why do you want to flip burgers at McDonald's? And I'm like, dude, I just need a job. But yeah, it was the life coach. And he said, yeah, I thought he might be able to help me get a job, but he did so much more for me than that. And, he asked me, he's like, well, if you could be anywhere in 5 years, like, where would you be? And so I told him my 5-year plan, and he's like, why don't you do it? And I was like, I gave him this long list of excuses, how I wasn't qualified. I didn't have a college education. I knew nothing about running a business and all of that. And his answer was, that's a bunch of bullshit excuses. And I was taken aback. I was like, wait, what? But sure enough, that was that pivot, that kick in the butt that I needed, and pushed towards second chance. And it was definitely interesting.
Yeah, man, I want to hit on that for a second. That resistance, that's something a lot of us deal with when we're trying to get out of that negative headspace, that whether we're dealing with depression, anxiety, undiagnosed PTSD, whatever it is you're going through. A thing that a common thread we all have is you have that resistance to go for your dream. If you're lucky enough, you have people in your corner that snap you out of it, or, you find something that connects with you, that gives you that ability that, okay, why not? That sparks that fire within you. But so many guys and gals are from our same, background. There's that resistance. Oh, I'm just going to go do this. I'm going to go do this menial task job. I just need to get this job. We forget about the dream. And then, like, man, like, you're fortunate. You're fortunate. So many of us are so blessed that somebody came in and put boot to ass. It got us moving forward. Like, what, when you look back, what was that resistance? Why do you think it was so loud in your head to not achieve, or not to try not to go for your dream?
Oh, I think it was mostly, I just didn't know what, I guess, you kind of want that safety, I think. And that's what a lot of, we want that safety of just, because there's nothing safe about it. Like, to be transparent, I'm barely scraping by right now. And, like, that's the things that people don't see about, like, doing stuff like this is it's freaking hard. And then, like, and there's no safety or security in it. Whereas if you go work a regular job, there's a sense of security, but we all know you can get let go for no dang reason. And so there's not really any security there either. But I think it's just, especially with, like, trauma, you feel more safe in that environment. Another thing too is, a lot of us, and you kind of alluded at it already, is like we lose a sense of who we are. And, because we're so taught that, I'm a Marine, I'm a soldier, I'm a sailor, I'm this, like, the mission's first. And we put ourselves on the back burner, and we forget that we're our own individual. We have our own wants, interests, desires, and so on. And we don't even know what those are anymore. And we have to rediscover that. And I think it was kind of a long journey of me having to rediscover who, or I probably didn't even know, because I think who Michael Parker actually was. Because, you go in straight out of high school and you're still kind of figuring yourself out. And then you're told, this is who you are, this is what you do. and you just never put in the work. So I had to put in that work to figure out who I was, what mattered to me. Um, and also, I hear a lot like this loss of purpose.
Yep.
I don't have a purpose anymore. Well, that's because we confuse the difference between a mission and a purpose. Like the military fulfilled our purpose because it was a mission that fed into what our purpose is at the core. And so, until you can figure that out, like what your actual purpose here is, and, who you are and what matters most to you, you're just going to bounce around wherever the universe sends you.
Yeah, absolutely. That identity piece, that's the hardest thing for so many veterans, myself included. I had to work through that as well. But that's what got the gears in motion, understanding, okay, like, yeah, this, if I look at it through this lens of, oh, woe is me, I don't know who the fuck I am. I spent this vast majority of my career in life identifying with this profession, this beret, this way of life. Or I can say, okay, how fortunate am I to have the clarity now to start building it back from nothing, start figuring out what's important to me. And it's hard for so many individuals because they want to latch on to that identity. And it's also why it's so painful to see other individuals that are still stuck. And you see them every day. They're still stuck in that identity of like, I'm a broken veteran. We sell that idea like, oh, I got to stay a broken veteran. It's like, no, dude, remove that t-shirt, remove that idea. You're so much more. You're a human being. Find out who you are. Find out what your values are. Like we get stuck thinking that the values that this organization gave me are my values, and those are the only values I have. Like, fuck no. Go sit down, do the work, read, do the hard things. And it's a beautiful process. It's hard. It's not easy. What were some of the things you identified that were truly uniquely you when you were going through that?
On what you just said real quick, and
Yeah.
before I answer that, in case somebody's listening that is in that stuck place, dude, the military was just a chapter in your book. It's not the end. Like it was a chapter. You close the book, or you close that chapter and you move on. Like, I don't know. I mean, I guess that there's the pride in it, but like as veterans, we pride ourselves on being veterans, but you don't hear somebody that used to work at Walmart say, "Oh, I'm a former Walmart employee,"
Yeah.
I'm the, but we're just like, it's, and that again, it goes back to our identity. But yeah, I'm going to diss on my Marines real quick. I think we're the worst because we have the once a Marine, always a Marine. Yeah. And yes, true. But I think in a lot of cases, that's a detriment because then you're just, oh, I'm a Marine. Yeah. Well, yeah, take those lessons that you learned in the Marine Corps and use them in the next chapter, but don't keep living there.
Yeah.
Some of the things that I identified that were truly me is, dude, I didn't used to hike and be outdoors. I found that's my happy place. I like meditation. I like all this stuff. And I found, like everybody, and I hear this all the time as people are like, you're not like other Marines that I've met. You're not like other cowboys I've met. You're not like other bull riders. I'm like, yeah, that's because I'm me. Like, I'm not any of them. Like, I don't fit in a box.
Yeah.
And I think too often, like, we're okay fitting in the box. And that was what was, when I was saying, I had to learn, it's okay. It's okay to be a nerd. Like, I love Star Wars. I love Star Trek. Like,
yeah.
I listen to all kinds of music. Like, I had to be comfortable learn to be comfortable in my own skin.
Yeah.
I had to, I always felt called to serve. And I realized that like, that is my purpose of service. But what that looks like changes, in different chapters of my life. Like, yeah, that was in the military. And then, I thought about going becoming an EMT and doing stuff like that. And I was like, yeah, probably not good to add more trauma to the pile of trauma I already have. But I still felt called to serve. And then I realized that like, yeah, that service is by giving back and helping the veteran community, helping the first responder community. So just I think I always knew like who I was. I just didn't know how to define who I was. And I think that was it, is like just getting that understanding of what the next chapter looks like. And
yeah, I think it's something that a lot of veterans forget to look at when they get out. They want to make a lot of money. They want to be really successful. They don't want to take a moment to stop and realize what is truly unique about us is that drive to be of service to others. And I've seen it firsthand with my great friends, my close friends that get out and they get really lucrative job offers. They're really happy. They're excited. And then within like 6-7 months, they're like, fuck, what am I doing? Like, this is great money, but I am miserable. There's nothing in here in this profession that is uniquely me. It's high stakes, high stress, and it's of service to nobody but themselves. And then obviously, if you can fit it in other parts of your life, then you're going to be successful. If you volunteer, you're within your community, and that fucking works too. But if you don't have that ability to give back, like you're not going to be fulfilled. And I've seen it, and it's understanding your true core values. But I want to go back to something that's really fucking cool that I didn't know you did, like bull riding. How did that start up? Because
yeah, so it was on my bucket list. I always joke and blame it on Tim McGraw on that song "Live Like You're Dying."
Yeah.
It says go 2.7 seconds on a bull named Fu Manchu. And so that was when I built out a bucket list. It was on there. You're like, I got to try bull riding, and I just never did. I never did, and then I was still living in Hawaii at that time, and I had gone home to Arkansas, and was at a rodeo, and I was like, or we were getting ready to go to the rodeo, and I was like, I want to ride, like I want to try it. And like my uncle used to ride, and he goes, son, this is going to go one of two ways. He said, you're either going to absolutely hate it and you're never going to do it again, or you're going to be hooked and not be able to stop. And I was like, no, I'm just one and done. And he looked at me and he said, I know you better than that. I was like, yeah, you're probably right. Went terrible the first time, came off almost right out the gate. And I got up and I was like, hey, next time I'll do better. And they said, next time. Sure enough, I bought my own bull riding gear. I started training with a guy that used to ride out in Hawaii, competed in a few rodeos. My second time riding, I broke my leg.
Oh,
yeah. And the very next day, I had already paid to ride again. And it was like $100 extra. And I was like, it was like this battle in my, I was like, well, we cannot ride. Nobody's going to blame you. Like pretty much everybody knows I just broke your leg yesterday. And I was like, no, we're going to suck it up. We're going to do it. And it was crazy because like I got a lot of respect then, because people were like, you're back? I'm like, yeah. And so, people helped me out, help me get tied in right, and went out and rode like 6.8 seconds. I was like almost there. You would have thought I covered when I came off, because I was so happy until I remembered that my leg was broke.
Jesus.
I was like, oh.
So you went right back with a broken leg. Fuck.
Yeah.
Where'd you break it?
This bone here in the front of your leg. I can't think of what it's called. I'm not good with the anatomy, but the bone in the front.
Yeah.
And people are like, oh, you didn't break your leg, or you wouldn't be able to walk on it. I was like, no, I just could, if I stand this way, I don't put pressure on that. And yeah.
Damn, that's the most cowboy shit I've heard.
Man, I had never broken a bone in my life until I started working with horses and riding bulls. And now I've broken my both feet multiple times, broken my leg, broke my forearm, or this forearm, broken ribs, bruised ribs, neck, back injuries. I'm like, man, this is terrible life decisions here.
It sounds like you have more injuries
down the road.
It sounds like you have more injuries post military career than you had.
Pretty much. And the ones I already had, I probably just made worse.
VA, please don't listen to this full episode.
Yeah, if the VA is listening, I didn't say any of that.
This is not Michael Parker. This is Steven Parker. Dude, so do you still ride? Do you still or train for bull riding? Like, how does that go? Like, how like that's insanely dangerous, but I can also see the thrill in it. I mean, being a cowboy, it's coming back into pop culture, and people are like going out of their way to learn how to ride and volunteer, learn how to be a bull rider.
I just want to say I was cowboy before it was cool. So, I quit riding. So I guess about 2.5 years ago, my bull riding career only lasted about 2 years. But I gave it up because I was actually doing really well. It was about halfway through the 2021 season, and I was doing good. And then I had a ride, and I landed on my neck, and I had a really bad, like, actually back injury. And it was one of those like realizations. I was like you keep doing this, but next time you might not be able to get back up, and how hard is it going to be for me to do what I do for veterans and first responders if I can't walk?
Yeah, dude.
So I had to really weigh what was more important to me, bull riding or helping veterans and first responders. And so obviously, we know which one won. Doesn't mean I don't get on from time to time. I was in September out in California for a rodeo that that was put on for Second Chance, and got back on a bull for the first time. It felt great. I was like,
how long did you last?
Oh, man.
How long did you last that time?
Probably about 2.5, 3 seconds. We didn't make it too long, but we made it out the gate, a couple jumps.
Hey, that's impressive to me, man.
I was like, you know what? Well, I'll take it. It just felt great to be back in there.
Hell yeah. I can imagine it's nothing like riding a bike.
Yeah, if the bike tries to kill you every 0.2 seconds, then similar.
Oh. So when you finally sat down and actually started following your dreams, man, like how did that go? How did building a ranch for veterans and first responders, like how did that? Because there's a lot of people out there that conceptualize it and they say, I'm going to do something, I'm going to build something to bring people on. But dude, like that, as I look and think of like the logistics, the amount of support it takes, like how did you build a team and people to support you in this endeavor?
I will start with, if I knew how hard it was when I started, we probably wouldn't be sitting here having this conversation. Unfortunately, fortunately, I'm pretty damn stubborn. So once I started, I was like, well, we got to see this thing through. And there's definitely been times I've thought about just throwing in the towel, and I'm just like, no, like you put in too much work, and people need this. Like you can't just give up. But man, it didn't go anything like what I expected. I was like, cool. Like we'll try to like raise money, get some land. I started looking at how expensive this amount of land I wanted was, and I was like, God, like how do you come raise that much money? And I was, and my beginning plan was get a ranch, and I always wanted to do like these retreats for veterans, and that was going to come after I built the ranch and had a place that they could come out to. Obviously, COVID happened not long after I set out on this journey. So, because I started laying the framework and making progress forward in September of 2019. So then here comes March. We're putting this work, we're getting forward progress, and then COVID comes. And on top of having to leave Hawaii, I the whole world shut down.
Yeah.
But I still made the most out of it, because since the world was shut down and everybody switched to Zoom and stuff like that, I was able to get a lot of education in that time. So I spent a lot of time just learning like how to run a business and this and that, and picking the brains of people that knew so much more than I did. And, just trying, just making the steps forward that I can. And, like I know like this is like God's purpose for me, and I know that he led me this way, and I know that he's not gonna let me down, right? Like he didn't set me on this path. He didn't put me where I'm at to see me fail. But I have to do my due diligence. So, you're just doing your diligence and praying that it's the right thing. And 2021. Okay, so to get the support and everything, to answer that part of the question, like in my head, it was a great idea. In the beginning, hey, like I made my own LinkedIn page, and I made a page for the ranch, because I was like, well, as we get going, like I don't want to just come out of nowhere and people be like, where'd this come from? Like, so I did that. We started building a following, myself and the ranch, and, almost immediately started getting asked for help. And I was like, I don't have a ranch yet, and I turned away 3 people, and I felt like the scum of the earth. Like I felt like one of those people that you hear that's always talking, but you never see them doing anything. And I hate those kind of people. Like I love them. And I felt like I was one of those type of people. And so I was very upset with myself. And so when the 4th person reached out, I stopped and I said, there's got to be something we can do. And I was like, well, I have a couple horses here, so they can come out, we can do a horseback ride. And I was like, well, hell, like I live in the Ozarks, like there's lots of camping, like we can go camping. And I'm like, hell, there's the river, we can go rent, and I started building those retreats that were supposed to be like, like a phase 2 thing. And I realized, hey, maybe that was the answer for now. Like we could be making an impact with these retreats while we were working on getting that land. And one of the biggest thorns in my side for 4 years was people be like, oh, I can't wait to come see the ranch. I'm like, the ranch is my house. Like there is no land, there is no horses, there is none of that. We're working, but it's coming, and it was always hey, it's coming. Yeah. And a couple months back, I actually was able to lease 9 acres of land so I can start building a ranch. And, even then you like, your mind is like 9 acres. That's not a lot of land, but I'm like, well, hey, it's better than none. And it's a start. And I know like for me, the whole thing has been like a journey and like, in faith, which the definition of faith is complete trust and confidence.
Absolutely.
And like, my faith was never in question in God. But it was in myself. Like I had no confidence in my ability to do things. And so I had to build, step by step, and build that confidence and trust in myself to get it done. And so I'm like, well, hey, if you can't be trusted with 9 acres to make something happen, then you can't be trusted with 100 acres or 1,000 acres or, multiple ranches across the country. Like you gotta build,
Absolutely.
And so, yeah, it's definitely been one hell of a journey, and I'm just lucky and blessed to have met a lot of great people along the way. Some really great mentors along the road who've stuck by my side for years and, helped me get to where I am.
Yeah. I think it's important to understand the value in doing what you can with what you have in that moment. I'm no stranger to that. I started a peer-to-peer support group, and my endeavor is like, well, I'm just one person. It's like, well, you're a person that's overcome some things. You're a person that has tools and resources. You're willing to put yourself through training. You're willing to be of service to others. You have something to provide. Do it. don't sit on the sidelines just because you don't have a vast organization and endless budget. If you can help someone and you can provide a positive voice or a small retreat, do it. It might not be the grandest thing. We might not be that giant friggin' resort, but man, like what you just said is so powerful. There's so many of us right now that have that seed of building something to help others. And they're dealing with the same fear and trepidation of, oh, I don't have the dream. I have the dream, but I don't have the facilities built yet. But man, like I understand that feeling of people reaching out and being like, oh shit, I don't know what to do. I can wait a second. I know what I can do. I can do something today. I can make time and space for somebody, and I can make people feel like they matter. You can do something. Everybody listening right now, if you're trying to find a way to help out, like maybe your grand dream is to have this great thing, but maybe right now, like you're building it in flight. Like, that's how so many people are doing their business. Like, hey, like I got a runway, I got X amount of money, and I can start doing X, Y, and Z. Fucking do it. Live your dream. It's not about, like, we often think of the end result. Well, that's a beautiful picture too. But set your sights on the day-to-day impact that you can have. And if it's having somebody come over and learn how to ride and go on a kayak trip and go fishing, go camping, fuck, that's a powerful thing to do, man.
Exactly. Yeah. And, it's like people are like, well, what exactly do you do? I'm like, I just save lives. And like, well, how? I'm like, well, I mean, I'll do whatever, like to me, it's like I've lost a lot of close friends to suicide. I've been that person on 4 occasions. I have 4 suicide attempts. I lost my grandfather. So I understand. I'm like, dude, I'm tired of losing people. So it's like whatever I can do. Like recently just helped a homeless vet who was really struggling go from Wisconsin to Arizona to reunite with his family. And that seemed simple and straightforward. It was a whole freaking ordeal, but just to see that gratitude, see them keep on with that fight, coaching guys and girls, to help them find their purpose and their identity after service, like, and see the transition and the shift in them. It's like cool, and hell, if you're out there listening to this and you're like, you got that dream, but you're afraid of failure, delete failure from your freaking vocabulary. That's like one of those hard things. You're like, things don't go the way you plan. Okay, but guess what? Everything's got a lesson in it. Take the lessons, pivot and move on. And an example of that is I did mention that rodeo that I just went to in California. There was supposed to be a retreat with that. We did not hit the fundraising goals. Didn't come close. Completely whiffed on that. And we just didn't have the people commit to come out, So there's no money for it. And it was complete failure. But it wasn't, it was a success because I drove and I picked my buddy up who in Phoenix, who's a retired NFL player, made him come out there with me. And, we went to the rodeo. It was great. I got to share my story in front of almost 2,000 people, something I'd never done before. Scary, one of the scariest moments of my life. But, I built a lot of connections on that, Yep. Also, what I didn't know at the time is my buddy I knew he was struggling, but I didn't know where he really was at on the struggle. And a couple weeks later, after we finished, he told me, he said, dude, my plan was to go out there, have one last good weekend with you. And then he's like, I was going to come back and kill myself. But, on the way, I was able to kind of coach and mentor him the whole way, help him process through a lot of stuff that he was going through, help him see a new side of things, on the car ride. We had a lot of time in the car to have conversations. He got to see me at the rodeo and, see that. And then the next day we went and we rode horses before we came back, and he had never been on a horse before. And after we rode, dude, he had the biggest smile on his face the whole time. And I thought I was going to get him in terror at one point because his horse just started trotting with no warning. And I just turned and snapped the picture. I didn't even look back. And when I looked at it later, he had the biggest grin on his face. Like, you know, and he was like, dude, I didn't know that was something. He's like, I thought it'd be cool. He's like, but I didn't know it was something I need. So now he's constantly like looking for a place to ride. And this is to paint the picture for you. Imagine, you know, a 6'2" NFL linebacker, big black guy with dreads, you know, and, and he got him over here like, dude, I need to ride horses, you know? And so in my eyes, like part of me was like, oh, like we failed. And I'm like, no, like we still got to have this opportunity to go share our organization. And we saved a life on the way. Didn't even know it, but we saved a life. And a couple of the people that I met out there, you know, they've reached out to me when they were in distress. And these are people that met me for an hour at a rodeo and had a conversation, you know?
Yeah.
And they're like, oh, this is somebody that I can reach out to when I'm struggling. And they've reached out. And, you know, I'm just sit there. Dude called me and was like, hey, I got this going on. He's like, will you pray for me? That's all I did, was pray for him. But that's what he needed, you know? And it's just doing what you can, when you can, and how you can.
Absolutely. I want to ask you something. One of the things that I always talk about is mind, body, and spirit. All are connected when I visualize them and speak on them as if they're spheres. When one is completely depleted, you can fall back on maybe the other two. But when you're depleted in all three, it's when you fall apart. That's where I found myself, and so many of my brothers and friends found themselves in the same situation. And faith and spirit are something that's really hard for a lot of people to talk about. How did your faith play into this? How did your trust in God's plan help you go through this?
Dude, I love that. Love this question. Because that's what I always tell everybody is like I don't care if you believe as I do, but you got to believe in something because you know, body, mind, and soul or spirit. And if one's out of whack, you might be okay. But if two are out of whack, then you're all kinds of messed up. And for me, that was a lot of the problem. Is like when I was in that dark place, I leaned real heavily on my faith. And I was taking care of my body because I was working out. Dude, I was like constantly in the gym working out. You know, I was in church anytime the doors were open. I wasn't taking care of my mental health. I wasn't taking care of my mind. And, you know, I was still like in this spiral. I couldn't figure it out. Then I go to Hawaii and now I'm still physical, but I switched to taking care of my mind. Let my faith drop off because I was hurt by people that called themselves Christians. I now call those types of people church folks. They just occupy a pew, but their faith leaves the moment they walk out the door, and sometimes it doesn't even extend to the pew they're sitting on. Anyway, I digress on that. But you know, and so then I was still, you know, I was okay for a while, but then I still started struggling, and then I found myself. That was 2019. You know, I was like, okay, I gotta get back in church, and luckily I found a good church home there that really fed into me. And then once I was working on my body, my mind, and my spirit, like I was able to go to like a new place and be so much clearer in the head, you know, and feel better. And, you know, it's just a great place to be. But like, yeah, like my faith has always been a huge part, you know, like I grew up in church and, you know, kind of drifted, you know, from time to time, and then you come back but there was just way too many things because I'm very like, if I believe in it, like I need to know, right? Like, so I tried to disprove, prove or disprove whether there was a God. Basically like put them on trial. Like,
Yeah.
okay, like if I believe in this, I need to know that I actually believe in this. And I'm just like assessed everything, and I was like, yeah, there's no other explanation. Like, there's too many things and unexplainable things. I'm like, okay, yeah, like yeah, there's a God. Like, God's real. Okay, cool. So we believe that, and um just lost my train of thought.
That's okay. TBI, it happens to all of us.
Happens all the time. I'm on a roll.
Don't worry, the audience is used to this. They've dealt with my blank out moments plenty of times. I know for me, faith has become more a prominent thing for me to talk about and speak about. And it's not because, I'm a perfect human being and everything I do. Like, no, like, dude, I forget to do my prayers. I'm a human being. But the thing that really brought me back into it was not only the amazing guidance of my wife, an amazing family. My in-laws are amazing people. But having that ability to tap back into what was something that I had as a child and then didn't have growing up, going through some really hard times, but then finding and understanding the connection of all three. Because my body was broken, failed surgeries. I couldn't do the things that I used to do. And then my mind, just like you said, I was dealing with really dark, horrible things that I couldn't fix on my own. And then I started plugging in back into the spirit sphere and into that realm of the world through mindfulness and meditation, just being still, just being still and redirecting my mind and really understanding that, okay, this is the same thing as prayer. This is the same thing as being able to sit down and do a rosary or sit down and just be present and still and listen. And that started my path to getting back into the church, back into faith. And I realized in this world, we can talk about everything. We can talk about the most depraved, gross stuff on earth. People are like never going to bat their eye. But then when you start talking about faith, people are like, I don't want to talk about faith and religion. It's like, well, you know what? It's helped me. So if it helps me, and just like medications have helped me, just like, stellate ganglion blocks have helped me in the past. So if this thing in my life has made a positive change and has brought me closer to those around me and has given me a strength that I didn't have and has given me the ability to feel better and do better in life, and I'm going to talk about it and I'm going to ask about it because like we just shared with each other, you're not the only person. A lot of us are starting to realize like, hey, you know what? Like there's something to this. And I think it's a great thing to start asking. And you what you said was spot on. It doesn't matter if you're not in the same church. You got to believe in something. There's a greater power out there.
I mean, think about it. Like, any culture you ever think about has believed in something.
Yeah.
Like the Native Americans, the ancient Aztecs, the Romans, the Greeks, everybody. And like, you got whatever you believe in, right? Like, I mean, if you were interested in my faith, I'll talk to you about it, but you got to believe in something. Yeah. And that's what I try to teach people. And, like, for I kind of remember what I was saying before I lost my.
There we go.
Got derailed earlier. As like in 2016 when I was in that rough patch and I was in church, like, dude, like sometimes I was in church 7 to 8 times a week, right? Like, because I live in the Bible Belt, so there's always revivals and stuff. So there's always a church door open, and I was there because I was searching for that. Again, wasn't working on the mental, so still struggling, but that was kind of in that time. I had this on 3 separate occasions, which is, like the first time I heard it, I literally laughed in the pastor's face. It was the pastor, and he said, God's put a calling of ministry on your life. And I laughed at him, and I said, me? Like, this guy? Do you know what I've done? There ain't no way he's using me. And then like a week later, I'm at a revival somewhere else, and an elder in that church said pretty much the same thing. And I kind of like, and I'm like, well, that's the second time I heard that in like a week. And then a week after that, I was at a different church, and the evangelist, told me the same thing. And I'm like, okay, that's the third time.
Yep.
And we know that God works in threes. And I was like, okay, you got my attention. Um, but, I realized, like, that's kind of when I realized, like, I was set out for a greater purpose than just doing whatever.
Yeah.
But, it's scary when God, puts something like that on you, because, like, I read my Bible, and, I take it in, and I know what it says happens to those that lead people astray. And I'm like, God, I don't want to lead anyone astray. Like, I want to make sure, and I, I'm very, not spiritual, but not like in the spiritual, like Christian spiritual, but I'm not into religion. I think religion is terrible, like, so I don't get along with a lot of Christians in Arkansas. Let's just put it that way. But this is like conversation I've had with my grandma, because I recently did my first psilocybin, journey.
Yeah.
And so, they live in the Bible Belt, they kind of look at you like, you did what? You did mushrooms? Like, oh, you did drugs? I'm like, no, it's not like that.
It's
and
a medicine.
I told them about my experience, and my grandma goes, well, since you've done this kind of stuff, like, what's your stance on, like, faith and things? And I'm like, oh, I have all the faith. I was like, but I don't believe in these church buildings that you have here. Like, most of these preachers aren't even preaching the word correctly. Like, they're leading people astray, and then and then of course, with someone like that, you've got to back it up with scripture. And I'm like, here's the scriptures on that. And so she's like, oh, like, he actually knows what he's talking about here. And I'm like, yeah. I'm like, like, Christianity is like a relationship. To be a Christian, you're striving to be like Christ. So you're striving to live by his example. You're not sitting in a church pew, giving donation, and then people like talking about tithes. Man, it's I got a different outlook than most people, but I just try to be the best version of myself and be who God put me here to be. And like, I don't believe in giving money to a church. I'll give my money to somebody in need. I'll give my time and energy, to support these missions and that. And that's how, because I'm like, dude, like, a lot of these pastors are making way more money than I am, preaching. And as somebody that's preached, like, I know, like, I can write a sermon, especially if it's coming from the Lord. Like, you can sit down and write that thing in 2 hours. Like, you don't need all week to write a message. Like,
I think it's a really important thing for everybody when it comes to faith and religion is find your way, find your path, find what resonates with you. When people don't do that, when they just follow along, then it's not connected to who they are. It's not connected with something within themselves, and they're just going and they're repeating a function. Walking into a building, sitting down, kneeling, sitting back up, going for communion, and then rinse, repeat again. But if you're not tied to it, if you're not tied to the teaching, if you're not tied to the experience, and you don't make that conscious effort to be intentional, knowing that, like, I am doing this to be closer to something, to believe in something. I always tell people, like, dude, it's your life. These are your values. Figure them out. Sit down, write on them, speak about them, understand what's important to you. Otherwise, you're just repeating actions and you're not aware and you're not cognizant. You're just doing things to do them. I met plenty of people like that. They're happy. They're great people. But at the end of the day, it's just walk in, walk out, repeating functions, but they're not too really tied to it. So whatever it is, whatever you're passionate about, whatever you're doing to feel that spirit part of your life, take a moment to acknowledge what it is. Take a moment to learn about your faith and be actually intentional with it. Otherwise, it's just like anything else. Like, you're sitting down consuming TV. That's the same thing. Like, you're just going to a place.
And like you said, mindfulness and meditation, like, that's tapping into, like, your spirit, like, That's why on my retreats, when we go out hiking, we find a spot and we just sit down and just have that space to meditate, because there's healing in nature, and
100%.
there's there's that's where you got to get back in touch with who we are meant to be, not what society tells us we're
Yeah.
supposed to be.
Dude, if it wasn't for mindfulness, if it wasn't, and I went and got my certifications, I went and became a teacher of it. And if it wasn't for those sessions of me just by myself, sitting down and practicing and being mindful and meditating, I would never have been able to bring myself to that understanding of like, okay, this is tapping into spirit. This is church. This is exactly the same feeling. I am present. I'm aware of what I'm doing going into my church. And that was a powerful thing. I didn't go into it thinking that it was a part of my spirit. I didn't understand it. And because we're taught that it's completely different, it goes against it. It's not the same thing. It's like, no, it's very much the same thing. Um, and it's a powerful understanding that brought me closer to my faith. And I know it's done the same for countless individuals. But what's the next step for Second Chance Ranch? What's the next? What's in the future?
Yeah, so right now, like I said, just moved on to 9 acres. Got a lot of work to put in there to get it going. So right now, just working on trying to gather the money to build pastures so I can start getting horses and build a place where guys and girls can come out and kind of just escape, whether it's for the day or for the weekend. Gotta take advantage of the winter time because all the underbrush has died off, so I can get out there and I can clear a lot of the underbrush. Gonna put in I'm going to clean up. Well, I don't really have to put them in. I've already got it picked out, but I'm going to clean up a hiking trail, like a walking path, and going to put in some benches and stuff so people can have those places to just sit and meditate alone out there, fire pits, stuff like that. So people can come out. We can, have those group discussions and get the horses so we can start doing horseback rides and I can teach people horsemanship. That's kind of the steps right now. Kind of pushed off doing any retreats until summer to fall, because to me, getting that going right now is kind of the priority, building that place for guys and girls to come out. That's kind of the next chapter right now. So it's just right now it's building up, getting the money and stuff to go forward with that. And, it's a little difficult because I didn't choose the nonprofit route, which I get shit for all the time. And I'm like, dude, I can do the same thing with a for-profit. It's just a little different, you know? And like, there's for me, like that was the whole thing. It was like understanding the difference between a for-profit and a nonprofit. And I weighed back and forth whether I wanted to be a nonprofit or not. For me, one of the perks of being for-profit is I can still raise money and all that. People can still donate to us. But I don't have all the red tapes. Like if I was a for-profit and I say I help veterans and first responders, that's all I can do.
Yeah.
Whereas I'm a for-profit, if Joe Blow off the street who's struggling with PTSD and has been through some stuff, he needs help. I don't have to say, sorry, you're not a veteran, I can take them in if I want and I can help them. So I have more freedom to help whoever needs help. And I'm not the type that, just because you don't have a DD 214, just because you never put on a uniform, I'm not going to just turn my back on you if you need help.
Yeah.
So I guess that's the next steps, is just getting the ranch actually up and going. That's been a long time coming. Keep doing retreats, working on launching a coaching program, helping people find their, like you said, core values, identify what core values are important to them, who they are outside of uniform, and, finding their purpose, and then helping them identify their next mission going forward.
Heck yeah. So real quick, how can we support you? How can the audience or anybody listening to this podcast support you in Second Chance Rehabilitation Ranch?
Yeah, I believe there's a link on our. I haven't checked my website in a while. I'm terrible. I believe there's a link on there, so you can donate. If not, I'll drop you a link. Follow us on social media. You know, the engagement helps us get out there. You know, come buy merchandise.
Yeah,
I've got some great merchandise out there. You know, all of that goes back into keeping things going. So just share it. If you know somebody struggling, send them our way. I'll do everything I can to help in whatever capacity. And, you know, if it's out of my wheelhouse, I know people. So, you know, I'm good at pointing people. If I'm not the right person, I'm good at pointing people to the resources that can help. So yeah.
Heck yeah. Awesome. Michael, thank you for being here again. Michael Parker, the CEO, founder of Second Chance Rehabilitation Ranch. Go to the episode description. There's a link in there to go directly to his website and go buy some merch, people. Support the cause. Mike, thank you so much for being here today. Can't wait to have you back on. Take care, brother. And we will see all of you later. Take care. If you like what we're doing and you're enjoying the show, don't forget to share us, like us, subscribe, and head on over to our Patreon where you can be part of our community and get access to all of our episodes as soon as they drop. And remember, we get through this together. Take care.